there are the grinning man cases and the laughing man type cases, but they typically appear more humanoid. They appear like regular people. This he describes as basically a gray, but this one, instead of having a slit for a mouth, which they most often are described as having, this one had a larger mouth, and it appeared to be, or not smiling, but laughing at him. And it was, he got a really bad vibe from it. It wasn't a happy laugh. It wasn't anything like that. He was quite frightened by it. And so was his parents. So
it was January 1st, 1978, Marietta, Ohio. The witness, then a kid, was in his car with his family. His father was behind the wheel, his stepmother was in the passenger seat, and his baby sister was seated beside him in the back seat. They were returning from a family friend's home. It was around midnight. They were driving when a strange object suddenly appeared in the night sky. It quickly came down, moving above the treetops on the left side of the car, paralleling them. The witness recalled peering out the window and staring at the craft and becoming frightened. He looked over and noticed that his parents were equally frightened. You could have cut the fear in the car with a knife. My dad tried to get away from it, driving at a high speed on a curvy road, more than 80 miles an hour. It didn't matter, as the object easily kept pace with their vehicle. It was while staring at it the witness suddenly realized that something was inside that object, and it was staring back at him. I could see a window and what looked like a bright white skeleton laughing. I could see black eyes, or dark eyes, where the eyes would be. It glowed the same bright white as the object. I have never seen my dad so scared in all my life. He doesn't scare easy. I just remember the chase and how scared my father and stepmother were. And that was his last memory of that evening. He has no idea what happened next, only that his father told him later that he had pulled the car over and got out. This was followed by the craft seemingly shining a beam of light down on him. As soon as it did this, the craft took off, vanishing into the darkness of the night. He had to take my stepmother to the hospital because she was hysterical, he recalled. Soon after, the witness discovered a strange dot on the back of his ear, which to him looked like a tattoo ink dot. I have never had a tattoo, and it's under the skin slightly. He remains haunted by the laughing entity he saw inside the craft that evening, and has no explanation for it. This was a real event, only told to relatives, who didn't believe it. My dad has told me not to tell anyone, because people would think we were nuts.
I've covered this in the past. I did a whole video on like tattoos, people seeing a UFO and then suddenly they have a tattoo on their body. So it's not that common, but it does pop up in some cases.
It was August 15, 1984, around 9 p.m., Howell, Michigan. The witness, then 12, was outside looking up at the night sky. Even at that young age, he was an avid sky watcher. He recalled that it was a clear night with only a few wispy clouds in the sky, and the moon was almost full. His father had given him a telescope for Christmas, his favorite gift aside from a Transformer toy he had received, and he used it often. It was around 9 and the sun had just set with still a bit of orange on the horizon. I had set up the telescope in the 5-acre field between my home and the home of my best friend, Ricky. I then went to his place to have him join me for a little moon gazing. I knocked on the window outside his bedroom, but there was no answer. So I climbed, like we did, to the balcony of the upper floor to see if anyone was home. Ricky's mother must have heard the knocking because she suddenly walked to the balcony. She informed him that Ricky and his father had gone to Pennsylvania to visit family for a couple of weeks. We ended up talking for a few minutes, and then I caught something from the corner of my eye in the sky to the north, maybe 1 degree of the tree line from the perspective of the balcony of her home. I saw 12 to 16 neon orange V shapes. They seemed to be substantial because as they moved, they would block out stars that they would pass under. I looked at Ricky's mom to bring it to her attention, but she was already staring up at this display. They were both transfixed on the objects. It was a shock at first, and we watched with interest for 20 minutes according to her watch. What we witnessed were these V-shapes assembling to two locations in the sky, pointing inward and then joining to form two discs, like slices of a pizza. The assembly farthest to the north had merged without trouble, and simply hovered in the sky without sound, and perfectly still. The grouping to the south came together for the most part, but one of the vehicles was moving awkwardly and seemed to be having difficulty joining with the other craft. And this is what we were watching and discussing the entire time. After that 20 minutes, the witness asked her if she had a camera. We simply didn't have the presence of mind to consider a camera at the time. Who would want to go into the house and miss a moment of this anyway? She said she had no film for it, but after a while decided to go inside and look for some. I stayed there on the balcony and watched until she returned. She said that she had no film and then asked me where had they gone. I looked from her to the sky and they were gone, just like that. The entire display lasted maybe a half hour, then was gone the moment I looked away at my friend's mom. It was an amazing night. Soon after, the witness returned home to find that his mother was quite irritated with him. She informed him that it was after midnight, which the witness felt was impossible. He had set the telescope around 9 p.m. He was only at Ricky's house for at most a half hour, maybe an hour, but that's it. No way was he there for 3 hours. Nothing made sense. She told me that she went to get me, but I had just left my telescope out and was nowhere around it. I thought that was impossible. There was no way. I could not have been out for more than an hour, being generous. There was just no way I was gone that long. In the intervening years, the witness found himself pondering reality in conjunction with the event he observed on that night. He wonders if he and the friend's mother were chosen for some reason. Were they imparted some gift that they were to share? If so, he doesn't know. Maybe I was supposed to act. Maybe I was given a gift and squandered it. If so, I apologize to all of you.
I don't think I've ever heard of that before. In all the cases that I've read over the years where these triangle-shaped or V-shaped objects come together and form one single larger object. It makes practical sense, the shape of them, for that to happen, I guess, but I've never heard of it described before. But it's an interesting thought that maybe some of these V-shaped objects, V-shaped or triangle-shaped objects that are flying around, are actually part of a larger ship. These cases where a person is like looking up at a UFO, and then they're suddenly there's this period of missing time, and there's no memory of any kind of interaction, nothing happening. It's just 1 minute they're looking at a UFO, and then they're walking home, and that's it. Unless they're told or shown, and in this case, his mother freaked out on him, he might not have ever noticed it. He would have just gone home, gone to bed, not thought anything of it. And it is interesting that there is like this, the way they kind of reconnect the timeline for these people who have these encounters. You're just 1 minute, you're just looking at a UFO, or in this case, a bunch of UFOs, and the next minute you're walking home, but there's no cut point there. It just seems it's a seamless movement in time. And they don't realize till later that, oh wait, there's this chunk there that I don't remember. And it's odd.
The witness, then 11, was a Boy Scout. He and his troop, all between 10 and 16 years of age, had ventured into the woods of Avon, New York. He recalled that he was quite excited as he was about to get his first merit badge for astronomy. I was known as the astronomy whiz kid and the teacher's pet for the class that about 15 to 20 of us were doing. The day of our evening test, I was asked by my scoutmaster for that merit badge to give everyone a brief practice that night before he came out to meet us to administer our test of the night skies. At about 9:45 p.m., the group of boys all gathered on a small hill in the field that overlooked the lake, the surrounding forest, and the rest of the field. It provided an unobstructed view of the skyline. I was testing the other scouts with various constellations and citing little facts, etc. One kid tapped me on the shoulder and said, what is that? I responded, oh, that is core. I didn't finish my sentence. That night was the most awesome thing I think anyone could have seen, this huge triangular object. I would say it was roughly about 100 to 200 feet in size, could have easily been close to the size of a football field. The witness recalled that it made a whirring, humming noise that most of the other boys could not hear, but for some reason he could. At each of the vertices was a point of white light, but a red one in the middle. The craft had to be, I'd say, about 75 to 100 feet up in the air over the forest. My conservation merit badge, which was next, taught me that the trees that we had there were roughly about 45 to 50 feet tall. The craft crossed over the lake and then over the forest. Once it crossed over the shoreline, the craft began to send a red glowing ball orb from the red light part of it. It would go at about a 45-degree angle. As the orb would descend, the craft would move forward to receive it. It was almost like it was an optic sonar at best. The witness noted that it did this between 3 to 5 times, then it slowly lifted up and without warning, at an impossible angle and completely silent, the craft departed. It would be about 5 to 10 minutes after this, 2 waves of jets, about 4 in formation, would fly overhead, and about 3 to 4 attack helicopters flew overhead with about 2 to 4 Sikorsky Pavlovs. The boys assumed that the weirdness had ended. They were wrong. The very next day I was with my conservation group of scouts. We had just finished a very rainy morning hike. It was extremely miserable. There were about 3 to 4 other scouts from the previous night that were with me that had seen the craft. Off in the distance I saw what I thought were 2 men I had recognized as being from the Air Force, along with my scoutmaster, the scoutmaster for astronomy, and a few others meeting together. There were a couple of state troopers, local police from Rome, New York, and, I kid you not, 2 men in black suits. He and the other boys watched as these officials screamed at the scoutmasters. Later that day we all had a meeting, and we were told that we had seen a very advanced fighter, and that the pilot somehow got lost. We were also told that we were never to speak of this again to anyone, especially among ourselves. The witness, now an adult, has since gone on to serve in the military. He wonders about the 2 men in black suits and has even pondered if they were indeed the men in black. Not sure, wouldn't be surprised, but being an 11-year-old and not knowing about all that, you just see what you see, right? He also questions the response. Why the state troopers? Why the local police? Why the men in black suits? What was the point of any of it? Who cares if some boys saw a strange object? Even if they told someone about it, who would believe them? It's clear that something else happened that night. If not directly to them, then to somebody. This is the only thing that made sense. We were not allowed to go into that part of the woods the rest of the time there. Something had definitely spooked the people that were working in there. Regarding the matter, the witness stands by his report, which he filed with the National UFO Reporting Center. The one thing I would not do with something like this is lie or fib. I am only telling the experience as I remember it. This is no hoax. But to those idiots that want to deem it as one, go right ahead. I can only tell you what I had seen, heard, witnessed, experienced, nothing more. I will say that there is not a day that doesn't go by when I don't think of that fateful night.
You see this popping up in a lot of Bigfoot type cases where people will have an encounter and then all of a sudden they're being, hounded by these government officials. There's lots of cases, UFO sighting cases, crop circle cases, where all of a sudden there's this overreaction from the authorities, and it's very strange. Like in this case, what does it matter? A bunch of kids saw some weird object. At most, they'd probably tell someone, "Hey, look, we saw some weird thing," and that would be the end of it. They'd most likely be dismissed or laughed at, and that would be the end of it. But with all these guys there, these officers and stuff, it does make you wonder if something else was going on. There's probably something happening in that forest that they did not want the kids to see, or they didn't want them stumbling upon. And it kind of is weird.